Goldman, please.
All right, let's share the screen. All right, this is an update of the American Rescue Plan Act funding, specifically the council subcommittee that has been meeting over the past month or so. So just to remind everybody, the city will receive a total of about $6.6 million in American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funding. The funds must be obligated by the end of the year in 2024 and expended by the end of 2026. On July 13th, the City Council created an ARPA subcommittee consisting of 3 council members and relevant city staff. The subcommittee has met twice so far. A list of projects and initiatives was evaluated. The list is rather long, so we broke it down into more manageable and logical subsets, which were included in the package. The figures that were listed on the project and initiative lists are a mix between rough estimates and more precise estimates. But we're really looking for council direction on whether to pursue the ideas, so then we can kind of take a much closer look at some of those projects and initiatives. Departments were asked to prioritize the various items that they submitted, but of course it'll be up to the City Council to provide the final overall priorities. And the direction from the council subcommittee to staff was to provide evaluation criteria to help better understand where the different projects and initiatives stand. So the 8 evaluation categories that were chosen were first, CIP and budget priority. Since the capital plan, CIP, and biennial budget was created with extensive input over a period of time, the thought was that if a project, initiative, or an expense was included in them, it reflected the City Council's vision, goals, and objectives. Second category was health and safety. If the project or initiative was related to health, safety, or security, this could also include items to facilitate remote work, customer access, and social distancing. Economic recovery, this is related to Oak Harbor's economic recovery. Restarting or resuming, this would be a project or initiative related to a business or city operation resumption. And then the next 2 are part of the phase 1 proposal that we provided to the council on July 13th and June 30th workshop. Category 5 would be phase 1 effective management, to ensure that the funds and or programs are tracked and reported correctly and allocated efficiently, to ensure that we comply with all the different rules and regulations regarding this federal funding. Also immediate response, to provide assistance to those most in need, to ensure essential workers are prepared and equipped, getting city facilities to open safely, helping the water recovery reopen, and ensuring employee retention and competitive workforce. The next 2 are from phase 2. Category 7 would be resilience and investment, ensuring public safety gear and equipment and training is optimized, installing resiliency and security improvements for facilities and technology infrastructure, continuing with economic development investments. And the final category is innovation and optimization, looking for work productivity investments and process improvements, effective positioning for future workforce needs, and effective improvements to ensure customer service needs. So the 3 subsets we created, well, there were 134 initiatives and projects that were listed, and we received a few more in the past 5 days as well that didn't make it in time for the agenda packet. So the list is, it's kind of a living list. But of the 134 initiatives that are included in the backup, the total funding need was $17.1 million, which is about 3 times the amount of funding that we will be receiving from this program. So we broke things up into different subsets. Subset 1 was either a department budget or capital plan high priority, and the total funding need from subset 1 was about $11.3 million. Subset 2 are the number of different categories checked. So out of the 8 categories I talked about before, if the project or initiative or expense met 1 category out of the 8, the total of those was $8 million. If 2 of the categories were checked, the total of those projects and initiatives was 7.1. And if 3 categories were checked, the total of those was 1.9 million. And then subset 3 in your backup were items that related to an immediate need and effective management, and the total need for those is about $1 million. And these funding estimates are not just 1 year, but these are over the life of the funding, the life of the project that or initiative that are on those lists. So the committee consensus included the following recommendations: to focus on projects that the City Council had prioritized in the biennial budget or 6-year capital plan or CIP. Look for ways to fund operational projects, expenses, initiatives with ARPA funding in lieu of using the city's scarce and more flexible resources. Ensure that we put in place effective program grants management via the creation of a term-limited finance grants manager position, which will be funded from this funding source through the end of December 2024. And also to assist in the reopening and continued efficient operations, restore the program assistant position for the senior center, and that would be funded through ARPA through the end of 24, and then afterwards would be funded conventionally. So next steps. So staff is seeking City Council input for the following. The ARPA committee recommended a budget amendment to use ARPA funds for the term-limited finance grants manager position, and also for the restoration of the program assistant position for the senior center. And the ARPA committee to consider other immediate needs, including PPE funding, and to replenish our stock from what we purchased through the CARES Act, which is expired, and perhaps other items from phase 1 and prioritization lists. The ARPA committee will continue to work further on prioritization and future recommendations to the City Council. And as there are members from the ARPA subcommittee, of course, on the City Council, we open the floor to discussion from those members or from any person on the City Council.
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know if you can see hands. I think this is the pause for questions.
Jim Wiesner, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, David, I'll jump in and help with a little bit of thought, obviously on the council's end, or the committee's end. We, as the committee, we realize we've got through 2024 to commit these funds. So, we're kind of saying there's a lot out there, right? And it has a pretty big list that David presented to us, and understanding, the thought process behind it. There's areas where maybe we can speed up funding on something that's important that the city's already got on its capital improvement list, and use these funds to do it, and then free up those funds from the CIP project for other projects that maybe do not meet the requirement of the funds. And so there's a lot to go through there. In the meantime, of course, staff has come to us with 2 immediate needs, and these were 2 needs that we thought kind of made sense. One was the program assistant position. That is a person we had planned to restore. It's in the budget to plan and restore that person, and we all knew that when we were going to get the senior center back up and operating to full speed, that this was a position that we were going to restore. It was a position we actually hired just before the beginning of COVID, and then, of course, pulled back because of the shutdown. So we have the opportunity here to use ARPA funds rather than senior center funds to do this. It's part of the getting back and operating, and so we just kind of thought that was probably a pretty good use. We've got some issues coming up with the senior center roof that we're still trying to figure out how to fund, and this would help keep some of the money in that budget to maybe help with that. And then the limited finance grant manager position, obviously somebody's got to manage this grant. We've been through this before. These federal grants are quite cumbersome and time consuming. Not only do we have we tasked Mr. Goldman's office with coming up with all these ideas for us and researching all these different ideas and creating all these flow charts we've been looking at. And again, you get it. It's a lot of stuff. We've got to manage this and make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble, find ourselves having to pay some of this money back. Now, one of the things I had suggested here was not only do we make this person our grant manager, but we also look for somebody in this position that is a grant writer. I think we have some opportunity to multitask this position and have this position not only manage this particular series of grants, but also maybe write some grant applications for us and some other things coming up. So that was at least my thought behind that. So Mr. Goldman's spot on with what came out of that committee. We felt as though it was important to come back before council with these two kind of immediate needs and then continue to take the slow approach on figuring out the rest of this. We've got lots of time to do it. We've got lots of things to look at. We've got lots of things that we can do that we had either already planned to do or maybe we can answer or maybe we can do sooner. Obviously, we have the opportunity to take this money and put it into stuff that we're all going to be able to touch and see and feel years from now and know that we were able to do it because of these funds. And so, like I say, Mr. Goldman's spot on with, I think, certainly what I expected him to come back with a presentation today of. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Wiesner. Councilman Servadius.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee and to staff. Obviously, there's a lot of work going into all of this behind the scenes to prioritize these funds. The thought that comes to mind when we look at the amount of building that we're hopefully, or the new housing stock that we'll see here coming online in the next 12, 24 months, I think of engineering. Are we staffed up in engineering, and should any of these funds be directed, and maybe they are, further down in the minutia of all the documents, but do we have resources going over there and getting those positions filled and staffed back up so that we can issue permits on time in addition to everything else we're doing in the city? I kind of want to use this money to make money and not just speed up maybe some capital improvement projects that we want to do. It's always nice to speed things up, but I'm looking longer term at getting those homes built and what that means to the city long term. So any thoughts there? How are we doing? That's the one department I'm specifically thinking of.
Thank you. Anybody want to respond to that question?
David, do you want me to respond?
It would probably make sense for either you or somebody from engineering to respond, but probably you.
I'll go ahead and respond on it. The necessary staff for engineering is really a product of what we decide to do. So one thing we've learned with better project management, we do have an interim public works director coming on that has a lot of experience in doing work planning and such. And so something we want to focus on is making sure you have the resources to do the project. So as we go through this and prioritize it, I think we're going to want to make sure we use that project management skill and making sure that we have the resources when we do these projects so that we can complete it. As far as the short term here, we have our consultant that's doing a great job on doing the development now. We had some change order promotions, so we're trying to recruit a position in project manager, our project engineer in engineering, and so we're certainly working on that. We do have a GIS tech position starting on Monday, and that was part of we put some extra positions in the budget for engineering, so that's coming on board, and that certainly will help. And GIS was discussed earlier, and we committed to giving you further update on that. So that's an area where certainly we can get more robust on. And then also David's working on the permitting software, and certainly that has a lot of aspects there in bringing through automation and tying to GIS and other services. So We're certainly working. I have some growth to do, so I have some changeover that's kind of slowed us down, but I think we're on the right track for coming back up. And if we take on some more projects here, we'll certainly want to look at getting services either in consulting or internal staff to make sure we can complete the projects that we plan.
Yeah, and I can answer that, Blaine, as far as, the research I've done for other cities, what they've spent their money on as far as personnel goes. Most cities are adding folks to the finance staff to manage the grant. A lot of cities are also adding outreach folks too, to provide public outreach depending on whatever funding program they come up with. And then folks are also using that bucket, I think it's bucket number 2C, to rehire folks who were laid off as part of the COVID-induced recession. I could continue to do further research to see what other types of employees they're using their funding for, but of course every city is different. Every city has different needs. So if our need is development, that's our need.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Goldman and Mr. Oburn. Any other questions?
Councilmember Heisen has her hand up.
All right, thank you. Councilman Heisen, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to chime in and urge the council to support the immediate next steps in terms of staffing. That is getting the grant manager or coordinator position, and then helping the senior center get up and running, I think are really immediate needs. So I really appreciate the presentation, Mr. Goldman. That's a lot of information to try to distill, and I appreciate all the attachments and the emails that you've been sending. And hopefully council can get moving on these first steps right away, and we can start looking at some more details soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman Heisman. Anyone else? All right, let's go on to public safety needs analysis, costs, funds.